The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Does the White House think this visit went well, Maggie? Do you have any sense?
They don't. No.
If they're waking up this morning happy about this?
Most people, well, they would, I suspect, not say that publicly, will privately admit that yesterday was something of a debacle, that these were not the headlines that they wanted to see. They wanted him to go in and behave differently. The goal was to have him go in and get out with making as little news as possible. He actually has done that in the past. He did it after Pittsburgh, where there was also controversy. After the synagogue shooting there, he was much more able to sort of stay calm. Yesterday, he couldn't stop watching television news where Democratic candidates were attacking him, and this is part of the process. I mean, it's to your point that there was no sort of visible presence of the federal government in a meaningful way as the shootings were taking place. And the day after, the president was at his club at Bedminster. He crashed a wedding that was taking place there. This is the kind of thing that any president would have been criticized for, Barack Obama, George W. Bush. But this president reacts very poorly to criticism, and he lashed out.
I know nothing.
Yeah, he knows nothing. Can we just ban him from ever attending any place where empathy is, something that you would want? Can we just ban him from all national tragedies and just, downshift into solving our own problems by electing a different party? Could we just do that? Because I think we know who's for gun control. I think we understand who's for background checks. And that would be 90% of us. And by us, I mean the U.S., all of us. This is crazy. This is absolute madness. So the White House thinks he failed miserably in Dayton. They think he failed miserably in El Paso. They think it was a debacle. And it was. This little girl whose parents were taken away. I tweeted out this video. 1 million people did. It's heartbreaking. It's like a WTF moment. No, seriously, it's like WTF, people. What are we doing? Right? And I tweeted this out, and people, you're exploiting children. I'm exploiting children. It's apparently too much reality for people that is seeping into this fantastical world of the 2-minute hate that they live in with Donald Trump as their guide through, fake proclamations and racism and hatred and blaming others for what, corporate America has done to working Americans. It's just like so unbelievable. So I just want to compare and contrast a bit here, okay? This apparently is too much reality for Trumpanzees.
For the parents, I'm stuck over there in jail. I'm not gonna have nothing. It's the first day of school for me. My dad bought everything for me to live over here. The rent, and I don't know what I'm gonna eat. And I'm so hungry right now. I need my dad for me. My dad didn't do nothing. He's not a criminal. So the governments, please put your heart. Let my parents be free with everybody else, please. Don't leave the child with kindness and everything.
Okay, if that didn't upset you, if that didn't move you, if that didn't hurt your soul, then you don't have one. But apparently that's too much reality for the Trumpanzees. However, let's compare her grief, which was brought on by Donald Trump, and Donald Trump's reaction to grief that was brought on by Donald Trump in El Paso. Watch this.
I've been talking to a hospital official at El Paso's University Medical Center, and I'm told none of the 8 patients who were on hand for the president's visit wanted to meet Mr. Trump. Quote, some didn't want any visitors, the official said, before adding, and some did not want to meet the president. We've confirmed 2 patients who had been discharged were brought back to the hospital to meet with the president. CNN has learned one of those patients was the 2-month-old baby who was shielded by his parents during the shooting. That baby has been identified as the child of Jordan and Andre Anchondo, who died protecting him. According to the hospital official, the president displayed a, quote, absence of absence of empathy during his visit. That hospital official went on to say the president made other comments similar to his remarks about former Congressman Beto O'Rourke that left some staffers thinking Mr. Trump was not focused enough on consoling people. That hospital official went on to say about these patients who are being cared for at University Medical Center, quote, the stories and retelling of their experience at that Walmart will chill you to your core and break your heart.
So Trump is posing with an infant whose parents, plural, were shot to death, making that little 2-month-old baby an orphan. And Trump had that infant, that orphan baby, brought back to the hospital so that he could pose with it and give a thumbs up and smile. And at the exact same time he was posing with a thumbs up and smiling with this poor orphaned infant, his stormtroopers, his deportation force, were in Mississippi coming between even more parents and their innocent children. I mean, he is targeting, working families, and by targeting, I mean in every way that you could conceive. If you think about, all this grief that Donald Trump has caused, especially this with posing with an orphan baby. Oh my God, who's exploiting babies? But in this sense, this baby was orphaned because of Donald Trump's targeting of Mexicans. And so in that sense, it's the president posing with the prey. It's like Donald Trump Jr. could relate. Do you know what I mean? It's like the baby was protected from a shooter who was targeting people that Donald Trump told him to target. It's like a photo of a hunter posing with their prey. This is the sickest man, I hope, in our country. I doubt it. But he is, you want to hear? Okay, so check this out. This is proof positive that Donald Trump is literally causing murder and mayhem. Literally causing it. There is a new defense now that criminal attorneys across the country are using. I know you know the story. Do you know the story of the a man? His name's Kurt Brockway. Probably doesn't ring a bell, but he's the guy from Montana who is accused of throwing a 13-year-old boy to the ground, fracturing his skull at a rodeo in Montana, because the 13-year-old boy didn't know he was supposed to take his hat off during the playing of the national anthem. Maybe he was following the rules for active military. I don't know. If you're active military, you don't take your hat off during the playing of the national anthem. Just saying. Different rules for different roles. Anyway, this man who threw this 13-year-old boy to the ground fractured his skull in a fit of rage because the little boy did not take his hat off during the playing of the national anthem has entered his defense. Here it is. He believes he was acting on an order by the commander-in-chief. No, I'm not kidding. His name is Kurt Brockway. He's a U.S. Army veteran, and his lawyer wrote to the court that this man believed he was acting on an order by the commander-in-chief. Now, here's a little detail you need to know. Mr. Brockway has suffered a traumatic brain injury because he was in a car crash in 2000. And so he believes, as a former U.S. Army veteran, quote, his commander-in-chief is telling people that if they kneel, they should be fired, or if they burn a flag, they should be punished. He certainly did not understand that throwing the boy to the ground was a crime. He believed he was following orders from his commander-in-chief. This is going to be in courts all across this country. It is actually happening in Cesar Sayak's case. He's the guy who sent all those pipe bombs that Trump told him to do it.
Clear.
all things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Is your base supporting background checks?
I think my base relies very much on common sense, and they rely on me in terms of telling them what's happening. I think meaningful background checks, I don't just say background checks, because we passed background checks a number of times, meaning the Democrats, but everybody knew they weren't that strong.
Expand the law.
I think meaningful background checks are a real positive. Politically, I can't tell you. I don't know, good, bad, or indifferent. I don't care politically. I don't want to have crazy people having guns.
His base will listen to him. The question was, will your base support background checks? Well, first he lies and said we already passed them, but they weren't good. We never passed background checks. We don't have background checks. The NICS system is, only as good as the data that's put into them, and the data isn't being put into whatever. But he's saying my base will listen to me. My base will do whatever I tell them to do. This is kind of like Charlie Manson stuff, right? Remember, Charlie Manson never killed anybody either. He ordered others to do it, right? But he was just as guilty for the murders of Sharon Tate and Jay Sebring and all those. Okay, that aside, Donald Trump is now a legitimate, or defense lawyers think it's a legitimate defense to make in court. Cesar Sayak, the guy who sent all the pipe bombs to the media companies, the guy who said that, that was driving around Florida with that white van with all the pro-Trump, anti-Hillary with the crosshairs and all that stuff on his, just plastered all over his van, right? His attorney is arguing, quote, this is from the court brief. In this darkness, Mr. Sayak found light in Donald J. Trump. This is the court filing that was filed for Cesar Sayak by his defense attorney, who, was sentenced Monday after he pled guilty to sending pipe bombs to any critic of the president that he could identify, right? So his lawyer says, in this darkness, Mr. Sayak found light in Donald J. Trump. He became obsessed with attacks from those he perceived as Trump's enemies and decided to act out, to send a message, to try to intimidate and scare Trump's perceived enemies. He is a Trump super fan. Mr. Sayak began to consider Democrats as not just dangerous in theory, but imminently and seriously dangerous to his personal safety. That is a Trump defense. Patrick Stein, he's one of the three men that were convicted of trying to bomb in Kansas a apartment complex where Somali refugees peacefully live. His lawyer argued that, quote, the court cannot ignore the circumstances of one of the most rhetorically mold-breaking, violent, awful, hateful, and contentious presidential elections in modern history. There's also an attorney for a man in LA, in Los Angeles, who posted anti-Muslim threats on the Facebook page of a mosque. And his defense attorney has argued that his client, quote, uses similar language and expresses similar views to campaign statements made from then candidate Donald Trump. In Florida, a man also made threatening calls to a mosque, and his attorney noted, quote, the very distinctly political climate, and cited Donald Trump's Muslim ban as being a reason this man perceived Muslims as being a threat. He was just following the lead of the president and trying to protect his country. There was a Penn State University student who threatened to put a bullet in an Indian man, and his attorney has argued that he is motivated by his love of country, and that while Trump was running for president of the United States, Trump told this Penn State University student, we've got to check people out more closely. It's the Trump defense, all right? Last year, a man who was accused of groping a woman on an airplane told the FBI agents, quote, "The president of the United States says it's okay to grab women by their private parts." And then we have this man at the rodeo in Montana who assaulted a child for not taking off his hat. And his lawyer writes his commander-in-chief is telling people that if they kneel, they should be fired, or if they burn a flag, they should be punished. So he does not recognize assault as a crime. The El Paso shooter said he cased, this is what he said so far to the police, because, you know, they took him alive. He said he was casing the Walmart for Mexicans. He wanted to make sure there were plenty in there because he was, going to shoot Mexicans because Donald Trump told them that they are invading Texas. They're invading Texas. They said that his rhetoric was virtually indistinguishable from what Trump had said on Twitter and Facebook, and still says on Facebook. He is still, Donald Trump's still running invader ads. He's still running ads saying this is an invasion. And, people consume more conservative news feeds on Facebook than they do, feeds like mine, right? They just do. So there is no doubt that the president's words are feeding this machinery of hatred in this country. I can't tell you how many candidates have said it. Elizabeth Warren has said it. Joe Biden has said it. Cory Booker said it in a church yesterday. I mean, everybody gets it. The lawyers obviously get it. The defense lawyers in this country obviously get it. There is a direct connection between telling people it's okay to act on your taught hatred and the president's, it's like the president gives permission. I'll get your legal fees. There was a guy who subscribes to, this QAnon crazy cult conspiracy theory. Donald Trump had a social media summit and he brought the Q people in there. And, he brought Gorka, white supremacist, Gorka's wife, white supremacist, the guy from Turning Point USA, white supremacist. He brought in, the Q people. And just, what was it, when I was in Denver, right? So it was a couple weeks ago, the trial for a man who killed a mob boss. The defense was made known, right? And the guy who killed the mob boss, he was sitting in court and people saw some of the video and he had MAGA tattooed on his hand and stuff and nobody could understand what that was about. Turns out he believed that this mob boss was going to, that this mob boss in particular was anti-Donald Trump. And this mob boss was going to act to do something bad to Donald Trump. So he drove to this mob boss's house and when the mob boss was out on the lawn, this guy murdered him. He murdered him because he believed that he was, a mob boss that was going to do something bad to Donald Trump's, like it was, between the five families or something. And, never knew it, but it was Barzini all along, so he killed him.
Clear. Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
We have seen repeatedly where there is a national crisis, he gives a speech off of a teleprompter, and then he undercuts his own words either before it and after it. He gave an address on Monday where he did talk about white supremacy and he did disavow bigotry and racism. But his campaign is continuing to air Facebook ads talking about an invasion, and they have talked about a quote-unquote illegal invasion repeatedly. El Paso has been a center of a lot of the border crossing turmoil, and so it is not a surprise that he has struggled in this moment. He also he doesn't do well fundamentally on these major moments that require empathy and somebody looking as if they are sort of rallying the nation and rallying people to support one another. And you saw it throughout the day. He felt as if he was being personally attacked and no one was defending him, and so he took to Twitter.
He's a victim.
And again, and there was an absence of leadership on the days of the shootings themselves, and there's been this strange brew of leadership in the days since. I'm just going to put up on the screen the names of the people that he talked about yesterday. The former Vice President Joe Biden, Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown, Dayton Mayor Nan Whaley, Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, Senator Bernie Sanders, Julian Castro, Joaquin Castro, Beto O'Rourke, Shep Smith, Brian Williams, Tim O'Brien. That's quite a list.
That's insane. You have all kinds of people suffering. He's using an orphaned baby as a prop to give a thumbs up and a lock her up smile, right? At the same time, he's ordering families to be targeted in Mississippi in 6 different cities who are doing absolutely nothing but butchering chickens so we can eat dinner. You know, it's just so the 680 people that were rounded up, 570 of them have been let go. 570 of them have been let go. This was all for show. The man is just he's just a brute. He's mean and cruel and dead inside, and he's trying to make America die inside. And now it's become a legitimate defense. So I was telling you this story, right? Let me just show you this. The lawyer for the shooter of a Gambino crime family boss, okay, who drove up to this crime family boss's house. The guy from the Gambino crime family standing outside on his lawn, and he's gunned down. He's gunned down by a guy named Anthony Comello. Okay, so Anthony Comello. Why do Italians kill Italians? Right? You never hear about that. Anyway, Anthony Comello is being defended, and in the new court filing in this case of murder, his attorney argues, this is the Trump defense, that he became so engrossed with QAnon that he felt Democratic politicians, celebrities, and people associated with organized crime were part of the deep state. And the lawyer wrote that his client believed he was on a mission to save the American way of life. Quote, this is from the court filing, okay? Beginning with the election of President Trump in November 2016, Anthony Comello's family began to notice changes to his personality. This is his lawyer, Robert Gottlieb. Mr. Comello's support for QAnon went beyond mere participation in a radical political organization. It evolved into an obsession. When Comello arrived at Callie's home, the plan was to stage a civilian arrest of Callie, not shoot him. But after a heated exchange with Callie, Comello said that the mob boss made a furtive action with his hand, which made Anthony Comello afraid for his life. So he reached into his pickup truck, grabbed his gun, and killed Callie. And his lawyer says because of his self-perceived status in QAnon, Mr. Comello became certain that he was enjoying the protection of President Trump himself and that he had the full support of the president. He held up his palms in court, and it had scribblings of MAGA on it and the letter Q on the other hand. Now, I pulled a video yesterday of some very, culty-like woman in a car. And she's sitting in her car recording herself while she's driving, telling you, you should remember the day when you first found Q. Q is truth. Q is freedom. And like at the beginning of the video, I mean, Scotty and I were watching it, and we thought it was a joke. We thought, she's going to bust out into laughter or something, or this is, something she's going to tweet and it's going to be fun. No, these people are like ate up with it. I mean, this cannot end well, It just, it can't end well. David Koresh and the Branch Davidian cult, it didn't end well. Jim Jones in Guyana did not end well. Jackie Spear, who's now a congressman, was a staffer for the congressman that was killed in Guyana when he went there to see what the hell was going on. She got 5 bullets in her to this day. Okay, that did not end well. This is not Kool-Aid. This is Fool-Aid. This is crazy. These people are just being, and now it's a real defense. It's a defense. Lawyers are actually writing this with a straight face into, briefs defending their clients. Well, they think they have the full support of Trump. They thought they were obeying orders from Trump. Trump is telling them to kill, kill, kill. Trump is telling them to do it. Trump is telling them to preserve the American way of life. Trump is telling them we're being invaded. Trump is telling them that, Mexicans are rapists and they're drug dealers and all they do is murder, 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 which is what he said at that rally in El Paso. Murder, murder. I mean, he said it like over and over. It's almost like the defense, except it failed. You remember during the metal years? I think it was what was it? Not Black Sabbath. It was another leather band, and they went on trial because if you played their record backwards or something like this. Judas Priest, it was, right? So it was the Judas Priest trial, and the lawyers tried to blame the music, like now they're blaming the videos, right? Oh, by the way, Walmart has taken decisive action, everybody. Decisive action. No, they're not going to ban the sale of guns. They're going to turn off any Xbox or any Sony PlayStation in their store that features any first-person shooter videos. You'll still be able to buy them, but they won't put them on display. Why? That'll solve everything. This is the Judas Priest defense, right? So the lawyer tried to argue that this kid who killed did it because he was playing Judas Priest records backwards. And Rob Halpern, I think that was Rob, the lead singer for Judas, he was called to testify in this freaking trial. That was so bizarre. Of course, it failed. But now they're deploying the same defense. Video games. Donald Trump is doing it. Well, Donald Trump is doing it. He is a cult. He's a one-man cult. He's David Koresh. He's, Jim Jones. And I've said this for the longest time. I think I'm the one that invented the hashtag Cult45. It just feels like a cult. It seems like a cult when you talk to people like that. They always have an excuse for any horrific thing that happens. It's always an excuse for it. Well, they shouldn't have come here in the first place.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Okay, I'm going to show you Crazy Q lady. She's a medical doctor. Family practitioner.
Remember this moment. Please remember where you were and the circumstances. The very first time you ever asked, who or what is Q? And here's why. Q is you, and Q is me. Q is logic. Q is a plan to save the world. Q is not a secret, but Q is secretive. Carefully crafted secret education that anyone can have access to. Q, one day, will be in every history book. Q is the best thing that has ever happened to you. So remember this moment. Permanently.
Oh my God. Is she? She gives me chills. She's the creepiest of the creepy. That is a family practitioner, a medical doctor. I don't even bother giving her name because she's so ate up with it that you never know. But she's this is so sick what's going on. And now you got this guy who believes that, he has the protection of Donald Trump, who goes to a mob boss's house and, gets into some shouting match with him, believes Donald Trump will protect him. He goes into his truck, gets a gun, shoots the guy on his front lawn. And now he is on trial for murder, and his attorney is making the Trump defense. Well, Donald Trump is, he's got them all in a spell. He's got them in, they're under a spell, and there's really not anything we could do. He's convinced people that if they do violence, he will get their legal bills. He's convinced people that if they do violence, he will pardon them. If they are corrupt, Donald Trump is literally considering pardoning Rod Blagojevich. Do you remember Rod? Anybody remember Rod? So Rod was the governor of Illinois when Obama got elected president. And so Obama left his Senate seat to go to the White House. And Rod Blagojevich actually made phone calls that were recorded where he said, I got this thing, the Senate seat, and it's so freaking valuable, I'm not freaking giving it away. And he tried to sell Obama's Senate seat to somebody who would pay to be a senator from Illinois. And he got caught. And while he was on trial, before his trial, I should say, he was featured on The Celebrity Apprentice. Oh, yeah. You know who was also in the boardroom during that episode where Rod Blagojevich was fired? Erin Burnett from CNN. Don't ask me why she appeared on The Apprentice, Celebrity Apprentice. But I've looked at that tape. I can't play it because Donald Trump owns it. And I'll get flagged. Yeah, but it doesn't really matter. All I could tell you is that because Rod Blagojevich was guilty of selling a Senate seat and got convicted for it and was given 8 years or something, and he's been in jail for 7, something like this. So Donald Trump is trying to send a message that if you're a corrupt politician, don't worry, just make sure he gets reelected. He'll pardon you. He'll get your back. He'll get you out of jail. He'll do all kinds of, and so these Q people are starting to believe that if they kill anybody or if they do anything or if they throw a kid to the ground and fracture their skull because they don't salute the flag in the manner that you think they should, then Donald Trump will, he'll get your legal bills, or Donald Trump will pardon you, or Donald Trump will give you clemency, or Donald Trump will spring you from the joint. I mean, this is the most unbelievable situation America has ever had on its hands. Now, this thing with the intelligence, remember he wanted to take this guy John Ratcliffe, the guy who auditioned during the Mueller hearing, saying Mueller was the criminal. Remember that? There was no question for Bob Mueller in John Ratcliffe's future. He just railed at Mueller while Mueller was sitting there, used Mueller as a prop, so he could audition in front of Donald Trump on the TV and call Mueller the lawbreaker here, right? And of course it worked. Trump saw it on the TV and nominated him to be the DNI, the guy who's in charge of all the other intelligence agencies. On top of all the other 16 intelligence agencies is this W-created director of national intelligence. I mean, W manufactured all these new bureaucracies, right? Oh, they're for smaller government, but hey, let's create a new position, the DNI. Hey, let's create a new agency, the Department of Homeland Security. Hey, let's create stormtroopers. We'll call it ICE. Sick stuff, right? But they're all for smaller government. Yeah, sure they are. However, Radcliffe lied and said he had prosecuted terrorists, he had an intelligence background, and none of it turned out to be true. So even Mitch McConnell said, you're going to have to pull this one. So Donald Trump told him you're going to have to withdraw your name. So Ratcliffe, being the good soldier, and being the cult leader, withdraws his name. So the number 2 at the Intel department, because, Dan Coates is retiring. He's had it. He's sick of it. I mean, this is a guy who warns that Russia is still doing everything that it did during 2016. And so Donald Trump wants the intelligence to say something else. And Dan Coates is like, I'm so sick of him taking our warnings and, reversing them, or calling us liars, or killing our reports, or saying our testimony was false. I saw him on TV and he's a weak guy, whatever, right? So he resigned so you would pay attention. And so the number 2, who's a woman, was going to take that position. Donald Trump forced her to resign yesterday as well. And the reason is simple. Russia is going to mess with us during this election. There are still bots all over the place. I see them, like somebody will call you something, or they'll do something really ugly to you on social media. And you respond to them, or before you respond to them, always check and see how many followers they have. And if they have 0 or 3, then it's not a real account. It's not a real account. So they're still there, and they're still playing, and they're making things trend that seem odd. Everybody's like, why is this trending? That is somebody manipulating the search results on social media. And this is what that social media summit that he had was discussing in private, how to do this, and you know, there's all kinds of interference in social media right now. Some is just white supremacists. You know, the guy from Turning Point USA, you remember there was a little scandal the other day that some AV squad guy who worked at Turning Point USA was a graphic artist, and he was, playing around with the seal of the United States, our eagle with the talons, right? And they've got arrows in there. And he put golf clubs and money in the talons, and he put a 2-headed eagle instead of a 1-headed eagle, which is the Russian symbol. And some lackadaisical person who didn't get, was hosting Donald Trump, who went to a Turning Point. They are white supremacists, Turning Point USA. And he went to one of their conferences, or whatever white supremacists call their gaggles, their meetings. I don't know. But Donald Trump went to speak, and he spoke the whole time in front of that bad graphic, okay, that had the Russian symbol on it, except with golf clubs and money in the talon of the eagle head. Well, those were some of the people he had at the social media summit. This is all to spread white supremacy. That is why Donald Trump, stood there and posed with an orphan baby, used a baby who doesn't know any, and the baby is like 2 months old. I just hope that baby never, ever grows up thinking that they were responsible in any way for their parents' death because Donald Trump photographed him, or that they feel their life is cursed because they grow up and they go, yeah, my life was cursed from the beginning. I ended up being the orphan in Donald Trump's hands after my parents were killed because of him. Do you know what I mean? It's so sick and twisted. But he gives a thumbs up like this. I mean, it's almost like, offering up the baby as a sacrifice to these crazy QAnon. I mean, it's just such a twisted mess. It's such a twisted mess. But as he's posing with the orphaned Mexican baby, or the orphaned Hispanic baby, he's ordering these raids on these chicken butchering, plants. That's what it is. These are chicken processing plants. Oh, by the way, there were thousands of half-butchered chickens left behind, and the plant manager had to clean up all of that. And then the whole system broke down because there was no one to work. People are still afraid to go to school in Mississippi. Migrant children, they're still afraid to go to school. A lot of people are afraid to go to work. They're hiding in their own trailers, in their own houses. This man is so dangerous.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes Air Force. Air Force. RandiRhodes.com.
Mary had a little lamb.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
Radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
I was asked a question and I gave an honest answer. He's a man who cozies up to the white supremacists. He calls them fine fellows. He's talked about brown people and black people out of this country. He's talked about countries. This is what he's done, the wink and a nod. And he can't have it both ways. He can't keep trying to stir this up, give aid and comfort, be embraced by the white supremacists, and then say, oh, but not me. No, he's responsible. He's the President of the United States.
Senator, can you elaborate on how you made that decision, on when you decided, when you believed that the President was a white supremacist? What was the turning point for you?
It's just one piece of evidence after another. And at some point, when he has been so embraced by the white supremacists and has not distanced himself, then he's there. He's winked, he's nodded, he's danced, he's helped, he's given compliments, and he's turned people against people in this country. That's not what makes us a stronger America. And look, we have a problem in this country. And Donald Trump wants to make it worse so that the wealthy and the well-connected can be the ones who stay in power and just keep raking off more and more profits, more and more money, tilting the system just a little more and a little more in their favor. And 2020 is our chance to fight back against that.
Senator, former Vice President Biden has essentially said that he's given safe harbor to groups like the KKK and neo-Nazis. Do you agree with that he has given extremist groups safe harbor in the U.S.?
I think that's a pretty good description.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Elizabeth Warren, who is surging in early polling, which means absolutely nothing right now. However, there's very few people that are qualifying for the second round of debates in September. So, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed if you're a person is not there, that they will get there. And fingers crossed that we will have, at least a debate that has less than 4,000 people in it. That would be good. That would be really good. But she's right. Cory Booker went to a church. He was right. Kamala Harris has called him a white supremacist. She's correct. Joe Biden is trying to call him a white. He's trying. Joe Biden tries. He tries to speak. It is interesting how the two of them are going at each other, which means Donald Trump wants to run against Joe Biden. That is why this argument is going on between Joe Biden and Donald Trump ad nauseum. It's because that is Donald Trump's preferred candidate. It's the person he believes he can beat. The president has a very difficult time speaking words. We know that. But Joe Biden is right up there with the speaking words problem. And the two of them on a debate stage together, I think that would set every English professor, every English teacher that ever taught fourth grade, I think it will, absolutely, kill them. I really do. I think it would be... It's just not, but these two, they're going at each other because Joe Biden is pretending that he's already in the general election and he is going after Donald Trump. The other Democrats who have to, debate Joe Biden, they're not taking the bait. They're not going to go after Joe Biden. As you could clearly see, Elizabeth Warren is too smart for that game. And if Joe Biden is our nominee, we don't want him dirtied up. That's just a fact. You just don't want to, bash him so hard that he becomes unelectable and people sit home. Well, I can't vote for Joe Biden. Really? We got a racist, witness tampering, obstructor of justice who takes help, welcomes help from a foreign adversary, who is willing to build nuclear installations in Saudi Arabia, the country that attacked us on 9/11, but hates Muslims for who needs this? So it's kind of hard, it's hard because this election is not going to be, without its issues regarding interference in it. We know now that Russia was in all 50 states. All 50 states. Think about that he's going to turn the intelligence, the DNI, the guy who sits in the guy or girl who sits on top of all the other intelligence agencies. He's going to put a lackey in there. He's going to have somebody that puts out intelligence that is absolutely opposite of what's really happening. He's going to put out intelligence that says, I don't know why Russia would do it. Vladimir Putin denies it strongly. I mean, so we're not even going to have anybody standing on that wall to tell you what's going on in the states. We're not going to. Oh, my God. So that's why impeachment becomes like the most important thing for us as a nation to pursue. Because at least if we began impeachment, like drew up the articles and began the hearings. Now, we can't because we don't have the witnesses, right? We don't. That's the problem. And that's why they're calling it an impeachment inquiry. But I think we all know we've been in an impeachment inquiry since at least Mueller's report came out. And then Mueller finally testified, and he testified he couldn't exonerate the president, and he testified that there was sweeping and systemic interference and that Trump welcomed it, participated in it. He testified that there were hundreds of contacts between Trump campaign officials and our national security advisor, Michael Flynn, while he was national security. I mean, there's just so much. Trump continues to meet with white supremacists. He continues to show up at their events. I mean, I just want you to know that it's not just me saying that Turning Point USA is sort of the wannabe Hitler youth of our country. It's also, there's another conservative group, and they're called the Young America Foundation. Okay, and the Young America Foundation, they've been around since 1969. Okay, this is an old, young conservatives, organization, and they have said that Turning Point USA is nothing but a bastion of white supremacy. That it's nothing but a bunch of racists, and that they've documented all of it. Jane Mayer, who writes for The New Yorker, who is an amazing reporter, she was given screenshots provided by the Young America's Foundation of all kinds of text messages from their field director, Crystal Clanton, that read, this is straight to the point, "I hate black people, like F 'em all. I hate blacks. End of story." Charlie Kirk, he is completely anti-immigrant. He is completely anti-Muslim. He habitually tweets this swill out into the universe. Okay, he said it would take 40 years worth of blacks killed by cops to equal the number of black killed by other black in 1 year. And Donald Trump invites him to the White House. He literally invites him to the White House. This is unbelievable.
Do you believe that the president is a white supremacist?
I believe everything the president says is done encourages white supremacy. And I'm not sure there's much of a distinction. As a matter of fact, it may be even worse. In fact, if you're out there trying to, in fact, curry the favor of white supremacists or any group that, in fact, is anathema to everything we believe. So whether he is or is not a white supremacist, he encourages them. Everything he does, he speaks to them. He's afraid to take them on. And if you notice, the one time he used the word white supremacy, he was, he talked about sleepy. He was awful sleepy in the way in which he talked about it.
He wasn't sleepy. He was agitated. He was on Adderall. Today he was sweating like a pig. I don't know if you saw him on the White House lawn today. He did 30 minutes. It's not even that hot in Washington. It's like 86 degrees. It's warm. It's not that kind of sweaty hot that he looked. His whole nose was dripping. His whole face was covered. He's a sweaty, bloated creature. But anyway, I digress. The field manager for Turning Point USA, Juan Pablo, okay? He said the only thing the Nazis didn't get right is that they didn't keep effing going. And Trump has them to the White House.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
You know, these Jewish false prophets, anti-Christian, anti-God, they're willing to put Jesus to death again. You heard this comedian, Sarah Silverman?
Oh.
You guys know what I'm talking about? She brags about it. I'd do it again. Listen, she is a witch. She is a Jezebel. She is a God-hating whore of Zionism. I hope that God breaks her teeth out and she dies.
Oh, my God.
She is a wicked person, and she is like the perfect representation of religious Judaism. She is Satan's scoffer, and she is there to take the world and make them laugh and then diss Jesus, to try to take away the respect from Jesus.
Anti-Semitism, anti-Muslim, anti-black, anti-Mexican, anti-immigrant. I mean, this is an epidemic that is giving safe haven by this president. People think, like I was saying yesterday, and I mean this with my whole heart. I've met the Klan. I actually, had a thing with the Klan, making me leave town. It's an old story. But back then, those people used to have to hide their heads, hide their faces, they had to burrow deep into, like a secret society because there was shame associated with it, because it was stupid, because it was, just pure hate that was motivating them. It wasn't anything to do with love or Christianity, although they identify with Christianity. I mean, it was just very sick. But now the lights are off and they're all free to come out wherever you are and just preach anti-Semitism and preach anti-black, sentiment. And Donald Trump will have you to the White House if you're willing to put it in writing, or are you willing to stand in a pulpit and be anti-Semitic, which then results in violence against the Pittsburgh synagogue or the Poway synagogue or mosques across this country. This is so amazing. And now Sarah Silverman, she is the target of one of these anti-Semitic, Baptist preachers. His name's Adam Fannin. You saw him. He's standing in front of the Steadfast Baptist Church sign. That is a church here in Florida. It is a Florida church. And they just had this big scandal, the Steadfast Baptist Church did, where the leader of the Steadfast Baptist Church admitted to using sex workers for what they don't tell me, but that he hired them. I mean, this is just, and he's standing there. I hope God breaks Sarah Silverman's teeth out and she dies. She is a wicked person. She's like the perfect representation of religious Judaism. First of all, she doesn't practice any religion at all. Okay, she is Jewish, but she chooses not to practice any religion. And then he says she's Satan's scoffer, and she's there to take the world and make them laugh and then diss Jesus, try to take away the respect from Jesus. I mean, he's putting her in danger. She actually tweeted this out and said, this guy's going to get me killed. And what does Donald Trump do with these people? He has them to the White House. It's like I said, this guy in Florida, okay, who is the Turning Point USA a field manager for Florida. He's the field director. And the leader, listen, I mean, this guy's name is Juan Pablo Andrade. And he is the leader of the Latino caucus for Turning Point USA. You talk about self-loathing. He said the only thing the Nazis didn't get right is that they didn't keep effing going. Another guy who is part of Turning Point USA, his name's Cesar Subveri, and he was in the Unite the Right rally. This is why Donald Trump said they were very fine people, because he knew them. He knows who they are. He actually has them to the White House. And then Turning Point USA, they had their summit. Donald Trump went to it, and they had anti-LGBT hate group called Alliance Defending Freedom, ADF, which consistently says homosexuality leads to pedophilia, even though all the pedophiles are part of the Trump administration, or friends of Trump, or lawyers of Trump. I mean, it's just so, and Candace Owens is part of Turning Point USA. And David Horowitz, who's also anti-Muslim and anti-immigrant, is part of Turning Point USA. And these people that tweet out, I hate black people. Like F them all, but she writes it out. I hate blacks, end of story. Come to the White House. And you don't think that this man is encouraging or violence against, various groups of people that make this country this country? I mean, this is just this is what he's doing. But you got the QAnon people that are willing to kill for him. You got the Turning Point USA people that are willing to kill for him. You got an army of sick people tweeting out nonsense all day, all night. You've got Russians that are changing the subject and dividing us over the things that are divisive normally in the United States and elevating it to a violent level. You've got you got the Sebastian Gorkas of the world who are also white supremacists. You got, what's his name, Miller, who is a self-loathing Jew who's also anti-immigrant, anti-Mexican, anti-Central American, anti-Honduran. I mean, it never ends. And these people are willing to do. Dan Scavino. Okay, do you know who Dan Scavino is? He's Donald Trump's communications guy. You know what Dan Scavino's job was before he got into the White House? He was Donald Trump's golf caddy. He was his caddy. So yes, we need to impeach this man for everything that he's done. But we don't have the witnesses because Bill Barr, who, gave a quote to a podcast that said he likes vigilante justice. He's another sicko, okay? He likes vigilante justice. He says he doesn't know why Americans are hardwired for justice, but they know, check this out. This is the Attorney General of the United States. They know that the justice system won't provide them with justice, so it's kind of rewarding to watch them take action. He said his favorite movies are Death Wish and the Clint Eastwood Make My Day scene. They're a bunch of sickos, all of them. Now, why are they doing this? They're doing it to divide us because division works for the wealthy. It works for the corporate. It works for the billionaire. It works for the billionaire class. It works for the wealthy. It works for the real estate class. It works because they want to steal everything. And they'll do it through the tax code, and they'll do it through, subsidies and grants and all the money that sloshes around. They're up there lobbying for it. They got their hands out every single day, and their hands are getting filled. Farmers are getting crushed, but their hands are getting filled. And as long as we're at each other in this manner, and they're withholding absolutely no tool in the toolbox of demagoguery. They got propaganda down to a science. They got an entire network that supports it. You got Tucker Carlson doing Goebbels' work. You got Laura Ingraham doing, I don't know. I mean, she is just a propagandist. Kellyanne Conway, propagandist. These people are dedicated to keeping us at each other's throats so that we never organize. We never throw this guy out. We never see him meet the bar of justice. And then when there is a lack of justice, they're going to point to that lack of justice and they're going to say, see, Justice Department sucks. You got to do this. You got to call it out with your gun. You got to take it into your own hands.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
The hearing that we had gave the lie to three things that the President and the Attorney General were saying. They were saying that the Mueller report exonerated the President, that it showed no collusion, that it proved no collusion and no obstruction. To the contrary, all of those three statements are false.
False.
The report did not exonerate the President. The report shows considerable evidence of collusion that it
didn't establish to a criminal level of conspiracy.
But it did more than that. It showed that the Russian government tried to subvert the election to help Trump, that the Trump campaign knew about it.
And welcomed it.
And welcomed it and cooperated in many ways with it, and that the President then lied to, and others then lied to investigators.
So what a lot of people say, okay, you say let's not get wrapped up in words, but words can matter when they apply to what information you can get and how the American people see it, right? So I'm trying to understand, because a lot of Democrats, they don't want to be forced to vote for an impeachment inquiry, but they presumably would be willing to vote for impeachment itself if you presented them with the evidence.
There's no such thing.
Right.
The committee has initiated an investigation into the question into the various malfeasances.
So in your mind, you're saying this is exactly the same as what we all call formal impeachment proceedings by another name?
This is formal impeachment proceedings. We are investigating all the evidence. We're gathering the evidence, and we will, at the conclusion of this, hopefully by the end of the year, vote articles of impeachment to the House floor, or we won't. That's a decision that we'll have to make. But that's exactly the process we're in right now.
That is exactly the process that they're in right now. And you know what the issue is? Do you remember I called in, I was on Stephanie Miller's show about a week and it was 2 weeks ago, because we were launching on Free Speech TV and she was really excited, so was I, and we wanted to tell you about it. Okay, do you remember that conversation? What did I tell her? I said to her, the problem we have is that we don't have the grand jury materials. We don't have the testimony, the actual testimony that was heard at the grand jury, because Bill Barr won't release it. And so we had to go to court and say that there's a legislative purpose for which we need the grand jury testimony. And that is an impeachment inquiry. So they're trying to decide, the House is, whether or not to write articles of impeachment, and they need the grand jury testimony in order to hear what people testified to under oath, which Bill Barr buried. We also need Don McGahn to testify. We also need Hope Hicks to testify. We also need Jared Kushner to testify. And Bill Barr is, delaying everything by saying, oh, no subpoenas will be honored. We're going to defy every subpoena. Now, what's interesting is the third article of impeachment against Richard Nixon way back was defying subpoenas, congressional subpoenas. So Bill Barr's made this blanket claim, and now they have to go to court to litigate his blanket denial of observing any subpoena, any congressional subpoena. They're literally breaking the Constitution here, saying Congress has no oversight power, which is exactly what Congress has in Article 1. 1 comes before the presidency is Congress, right? Because it's the people's house. It's the most important place we have. It's the only place we have direct representation, okay? So they are in court trying to get the court to rule that Don McGahn, who is not the president's personal attorney, just like Bill Barr is not the president's personal attorney. Bill Barr is the Attorney General of the United States, meaning he is our attorney. And McGahn is the attorney for the office of the presidency, not the president. Doesn't represent the president. He represents that office, and that is why his testimony about all the obstruction that Trump asked him to engage in is key. So they're in court trying to get the grand jury materials. They're in court trying to get McGahn to be compelled to testify by the court. And Don McGahn keeps deferring to the president. He's like, whatever the president tells me to do, that's what I'll do, unless a court tells me differently. And that's why they're in court. So we actually have begun an impeachment inquiry, and I've been saying that for a really long time. For some strange reason, last night, everybody went, oh, there's news. I think the news part of it is that Nancy Pelosi is quietly, very quietly, she's very strategic, Nancy, but she's been quietly allowing all of these court filings to occur.
Every court filing we're making, every assertion that we need this information for impeachment, consideration, et cetera, was signed off on by the Speaker. The House Counsel is bringing these lawsuits. The House Counsel reports to the Speaker, not to the Chairman of the Judiciary Committee. We asked the House Counsel what to do, but I can't tell him what to do. So the Speaker is going. The Speaker wants to vindicate the Constitution, and she's been very direct in that, and so do we. Political considerations aside, we must protect the Constitution. This is probably one of the worst crises we've faced in constitutional law since after the Civil War. In terms of aggrandizement of power to the executive, in terms of denial of congressional power, separation of powers, in terms of the president asserting powers that he doesn't have and using them. We have to have limited government. We have to have constitutional government, and only Congress can do this. So we have to do this.
That's absolutely right. And Nancy Pelosi is very quietly, supporting the House Counsel, who is filing all of these lawsuits, who is going to the court, and we keep winning. That we also need his tax returns. That's another one, because we all got familiar with the law of this country that says that if there's a request made to the House Ways and Means Committee chairman, that the IRS shall furnish. See, that's not one of those may. That's a shall furnish upon request from the House Ways and Means Committee chair, which has already occurred. And Bill Barr is also delaying, just standing and stonewalling, making false cases. And remember, Don McGahn cannot claim executive privilege. It just can't happen. And you know why? He's already testified. That's why. He already testified under oath in the grand jury proceedings. That's how Mueller wrote that report, based on the testimony Don McGahn gave under oath. So if he was able to speak to the grand jury under oath, then there is no executive privilege that had been asserted. And you can't do it ex post facto. Can't do it after the fact. That's what that means. So this is all a ruse, right? And it's all to delay. It's all to run out the clock. That's why Mitch McConnell on the gun issue, that's why he won't convene, a special session. They're all going to go home. They're all going to vacate. And it's not going to go well for them. Trust me. Utah. There was a town hall meeting in Utah with their representative, and the Utahns showed up at this meeting, and they were screaming at their Republican representative about background checks, about banning assault weapons. And what is wrong with you? So if Utah's, I was going to say up in arms, but up against arms, it's just not going to go well at these. So they'll just stop having the town hall meetings is what they'll stop doing. But listen, this is all a ruse. This is all to run out of clock. This is all to, get through an election. Now, I will tell you what Howard thinks. This is just so interesting. Howard thinks that once the impeachment, and he's said this for months and months and months, okay? And if I don't characterize it that way, he will be peeved at me. That when Donald Trump and the impeachment hearings begin and Donald Trump gets really, really dirtied up, like really exposed as the criminal he is, Mitt Romney will announce that he's challenging him for the Republican nomination. This is what Howard thinks. Sometimes he's right. Sometimes he is. He also thinks Barr is doing this because he's going to get a Supreme Court seat, and that's why he's willing to do this for Donald Trump. It's interesting. Sick, but interesting.
Clear for takeoff. The Randi Rhodes Air Force. Air Force. RandiRhodes.com. This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
McGahn and the other people I mentioned are very key to consideration of impeachment for obstruction of justice, abuse of power, all the things that were in the Mueller report. But we have other grounds that we have to look into, too, and we'll be holding hearings of violations of the emoluments clause of the Constitution. And just the fact of withholding, opposing all congressional subpoenas. That was Article 3 of the Nixon impeachment. And here he's gone way further, even to the extent of saying we'll oppose all subpoenas,
all of them,
which is another way of saying we don't recognize the separation of powers. And we were going to aggrandize power to the executive branch, which is core impeachable. And there are others, too. So we'll be looking at all of these things.
Yeah, and you know what? Another thing that you should look at, and I know this is, this is like heady stuff, but under United States domestic and international law and treaties that we've signed, which are the supreme law of the United States, the locking up of immigrants for a civil crime of visa overstays or for making claims of asylum, which is completely legal no matter where you enter. You don't have to enter at a port of entry. You could enter anywhere in the United States. And once you have a foot on American soil, you can make a claim of asylum, and you then are due process to see if there's a credible fear. Deporting people back to places where they've made a claim of credible fear, just deporting these people and they end up dead. We deported a guy who was an Iraqi guy who had never, ever been to Iraq in his life. Never been to Iraq. He was like, 6 months old when he was brought here. And I think he was in his 20s. And Trump decided to deport this guy back to Iraq. The guy had diabetes. He couldn't get any treatment in Iraq for his he died. He died. That is a violation of international law. That is a violation of U.S. domestic law. That is a violation of all the treaties we have signed over the years. Donald Trump's enforcement of this asylum policy that he's got in his head is not just against the Constitution's provisions, but also 3 treaties to which we are signatories to. The 1967 Refugee Protocol, which guarantees the human right to seek asylum. The Convention Against Torture, which prohibits deporting asylum seekers to places where they may face bodily harm or death. And then your favorite, the Geneva Convention, on the protection of conflict-affected civilians that requires humane treatment for civilian detainees, even in war. We treat war criminals better than we treat people who are coming here trying to make a claim for asylum. Getting lost in all this is that there is nothing illegal about coming here and making a claim for asylum. And if you came here on a visa and your visa expired and you stayed 15 years, that's a civil violation, meaning you pay a fine. after due process, you could deport somebody for overstaying a visa. I had a girlfriend, believe it or not, she's from Sweden. I saw her in Stockholm about 2 years ago. We went and we had a reunion. She came here as an au pair, fancy word for nanny. Swedish girl, gorgeous girl, Anna. Her name's Anna. And Anna and I used to, run around together. We had like a group of girls when I was a rock jock, right? When I was working for the rock station here. She's only rock and roll. And we got backstage passes, went on the road for Motley Crue, with Motley Crue. We went on the road for 10 days with everybody. We just had a blast. She overstayed her visa. They deported her. She now lives back in Sweden. And that's why I had to go all the way to Stockholm to see her. Hadn't seen her in years. So you can get deported, but, there's a process for that. Now, a lot of people believe that the reason why these particular plants were targeted in a 1-year-long criminal investigation for which no one has been held for any criminal activity. There was no urgency to this raid. There was no impact on public safety for this raid to have occurred in Mississippi. Some people think that it was retaliation because this company, well, there are a bunch of companies, but for the most part, it's Payco and Cook. I know it's spelled like Coke, but it's not, has nothing to do with the Koch brothers. This is a different, they pronounce it Cook, but it's spelled Koch. Somebody needs to tell them that they're Jews, but okay. They apparently had to settle a case against the abuse of their migrant workers for sexual abuse. And they had to pay like $3.7 million in fines for abusing sexually the female migrants and, saying that if they complained, they'd be fired, meaning if, they would be retaliated against. And so these workers unionized. Oh, yeah, they unionized. And some people think that that's why these particular workers were targeted, because they had the audacity to unionize. Send a message. Don't you dare. Don't you dare. And that's what this whole country needs to do. Organized labor is really, really, really the answer for so much that's going on, like low wages and keeping you on the payroll for 39.3 hours so that you don't get the 40 hours and you're not a full-time employee, so you don't get the health care coverage. You know what I mean? It's just literally having the United States government subsidize people who aren't paid living wages with subsidies for health insurance, with food stamps or EBT cards, to take the burden off of these multi-billion-dollar corporations. I'll tell you the two companies that were raided. One has, I think, $3.2 billion in revenue each and every year. One is the 8th largest poultry processing company, and the other one is the 3rd largest poultry processing company. And these employees have decided to unionize. And so some people think that's why they were targeted. But I will say, there was no criminality. They're just 570 were released today. And when they did the raids, 300 more were released from custody. So that's just about everybody. No crimes. They couldn't find any crimes. Tony in California. Hello.
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 Who am I talking to?
¿Cómo?
Who am I talking to?
Randy.
Oh, Randy. How are you, Randy?
Hi.
Yes, I'm Mexican. I've been living in this nation for more than 2 years. My daughter was born in 2000. She's a U.S. citizen. And I don't feel I'm illegal. I'm an immigrant. I feel American in every sense of the word.
Mm-hmm.
As every other Mexican it is.
Yeah.
We are mostly all Native Americans
by
origin.
Yeah.
And the divisions that the Republican Party, Donald Trump, is using to raise.
Yeah, but you know what the question for you, Tony, is? Why are so many Latinos, Republican? What is the deal there? How could they support any of this?
Ignorance. They forgot their identity. And the identity is that they are oppressed. Every worker in America is being oppressed by the capital class. They lost their identity the day they signed. They started losing their identity. All the American people, the day they agreed on the New Deal to save capitalism. And in the process, they started collaborating with the capital in saving this system. They developed since then as a bribe to divide the working class of the whole world.
Well, see, that's the whole thing. But that's the whole thing.
You are working class.
Right.
Yes.
And that's the whole thing.
We are working class. Everybody is working class. We are all oppressed by the same power.
That's the point. That's exactly what you need to drive home with anybody that talks to you. You just need to drive that point home, whether they're for you or against you, yes. or Mexican or American or some other Honduran.
We are all oppressed.
Just tell them.
We are all being deceived.
But here's the point. Here's the point. You need to be able to say it in a sentence. Just tell them, as long as you point at me and as long as I point at you, they get to keep doing it.
Right. Assume responsibility.
That's the biggest message that you need to take away from all of this violence this week, this hatred this week. You know, I just want to say love is not a mental illness. Therefore, hate is not a mental illness. So let's stop passing it off on video games and mental illness. This is a plan from on high, okay? As long as I'm pointing at Tony and Tony's pointing at me, or a Honduran is pointing at a Haitian and a Haitian is pointing at a Jamaican, okay, you get this? As long as everybody's pointing at everybody else and the white people are pointing at all of us, they get to oppress us. They get to keep wages low. They get to keep all the profits without paying taxes. They get to offload their responsibility to provide health care to the state. Don't you get it? That's what this chaos is all about. Have a great weekend. Think about it.